Naveed Raza for thefinalpoint.com here with UFC fighter Mike+swick. He's coming off a difficult loss to Dan Hardy. It's a fight that if you won would have got you an immediate shot at Georges St. Pierre. He was the champ right now. What happened exactly in that fight? Or when I was watching, I thought you seemed a little off even from the beginning. But can you kind of walk us through what happened in that fight?
Yeah, it just didn't go my way. I got caught in the second, and that changed a lot, and it was hard getting recovered from that, and my reaction time was real bad, and it was just a bad fight. He was the better man that night. So obviously I'd love to fight him again, but I know he's fighting GSP, and so I got to just kind of work my way back up again, which kind of sucks. But I wish I had to perform better, and represented the way I should have versus going out there and fighting like that.
So speaking of a rematch, Ben Saunders, who you kind of dominated a few UFCs ago, has been quoted as saying some negative things, and he thinks he really wants another shot at you and can win. Is that something that you have in mind that you might want to take on, or you just whoever the UFC puts in front of you?
Absolutely, I'd fight him 10 more times. It doesn't matter to me. It upset me a little bit because he beat Davis. He hasn't said a word, and then he beat Davis, and now he's making excuses about why I won. I think because he beat Davis, he's trying to discredit my win so that people would think he could have beat me as well. And he's saying that he was injured and that he had bills to pay and he shouldn't have taken the fight at a certain time. And I mean, literally every excuse you could possibly make. And I think that's weak. You never hear guys from AK making excuses. And like I just said, I lost the fair and square. And that's how we train. We go out there, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you can't make excuses, and that's what he did. And then, on top of that, he discredited me by saying that after the fight in the locker room, that we were saying some negative comments toward him, making fun of him kind of for losing, which never happened. I mean, after the fight, I actually had a lot of respect for him, and I hung out in his locker room and finished watching the whole card with him, and we talked the entire time because I thought he was a cool guy. I really liked him, and I know he has a lot of potential. And the fight didn't go his way, but the fight was over, and I felt like we were really cool. And then he said that all this stuff that Bob Cook and someone else said negative toward him, and we laughed or something, and it's completely untrue. I've never been disrespectful to an opponent. I mean, you can ask any opponent I've ever fought. Before, after, I've never been disrespectful. So, for him to say that in the public and try to make me look like, I'm disrespectful, and, a lot of the fans see that, and they might think that it was true, that we were making fun of him, and that would be really bad. I think that's very disrespectful to make fun of somebody, if they lose. So that upset me, obviously. And I mentioned I'll have a rematch. I'll definitely do it. And then he hasn't said much since, but I have no problem. I'll fight him 10 times. We can fight all this year, like 4 more times.
Finish out your career just fighting Ben Saunders over and over.
That's fine. I mean, the thing about it is like it doesn't matter that he beat Marcus Davis, because how he beat Marcus Davis is not how he's going to beat me. And that was the reach and the height advantage. He doesn't have a good hands. He's not a great striker as far as punching, and he kind of cowers when someone strikes at him. And it's Davis kind of put the pressure on him and was landing some strikes, and he kind of cowered back, and he lands the knees and the kicks, and that's his biggest weapon. But when it comes down to boxing, he's not up to par, and that's where I beat him, and that's where I could continuously beat him, I feel, and I think he's a great fighter. And before, he started saying all this stuff, I thought he was a real respectful guy, but, I guess the real people show their true color sometimes.
I went back actually and rented the season 1 of The Ultimate Fighter and kind of watched all that stuff, and just an unbelievable season of how many fighters came out of there and had hugely successful careers. But do you ever look back at that and say, I was a guy who was competing as a heavyweight and trying to get in the UFC, from that to having action figures out of yourself now? Do you ever sit back and just say, man, how surreal that is?
It's crazy. I would have fought any weight class to be on the show. I mean, my dream was to be in the UFC, and I had an opportunity, so I would have fought anyone. And it worked out. I got in the UFC. And yeah, you're right. It's cool, man, to have action figures and video games and stuff. I definitely never counted on it, but it's very interesting, and I'm very appreciative. I'm appreciative that I've had all the opportunities that I've had.
There's an interesting article I saw on MMA Fan House, and it kind of talked about the camps. Right now, AKA has a real solid camp with Koscheck, yourself, Fitch, Cain Velasquez, all those guys, and nobody fights each other out of the same camps. And you kind of have the same situation with Greg Jackson's camp with his Albuquerque and Nate Marquardt's section over in Denver, and then obviously GSP's in Canada. Do you ever see a situation where anybody from AK would possibly almost have to fight each other just because you guys have kind of cleaned out that division, or maybe if titles are implicated, it might change some things?
Well, not now. I mean, maybe if I'd be fighting GSP next. No, I mean, we don't have a reason, and we get asked that question all the time, and it's something you can't win with answering the question. I mean, if we say we won't fight each other, then the fans come down on us and get mad, and then if we say we would fight each other, then we come down on each other, and then we're going to have a lot more intense sparring sessions. So it's like there's no real safe answer, you know, and the bottom line is right now it's not an issue. I mean, there's no reason to even talk about it. And so, you know, everyone has fights, you know, lined up that aren't together. So it's like, I mean, I don't know who I'm fighting, who Fitch is fighting, but there's so many welterweights out there. I mean, I know I'm not getting the title shot next, so there's 20 other guys I could fight. And same with Koscheck and Fitch. So, you know, it's definitely not an issue. And if it ever becomes an issue, we'd address it. But I mean, it's something, you know, being political as I can, we can't really address right now.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about this. You have a new business, Combat Lifestyle. It's a print shop. How did you get into all that, and how's that going so far? And kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Combat Life is the clothing line, and I created that to pass out to the military because I do a lot of military tours, and so I decided to start printing. I came up with Combat Life, and I started printing shirts just to hand out, and then it just grew and grew and got bigger and bigger, and I've shipped thousands of shirts over to Afghanistan and Iraq, and it was basically a charity for a year and a half, and we just went live to where you can actually purchase shirts now at combatlifebrand.com, and in the process I opened up a screen printing shop, which is another corporation which prints all my stuff exclusively, and we also are open to the public, so we actually can print custom t-shirts, embroidery, or whatever for anyone in the country and ship out. So, I mean, we're taking orders from all over the country and getting a lot of business. So it's two separate companies, but, you know, they work together.
Before we let you go, we saw NFL Hall-of-Famer Herchel Walker's training with AKA now. You got a chance to kind of peek at his session today. What do you think of him coming back, and so far what you've seen of his training?
Oh, it's awesome, man. You know, he's an athlete. He's definitely a very gifted person, and you know, he's training hard. You know, it's not a publicity stunt. It's not a publicity stunt. He's actually a fan of the sport, and you know, he just decided he wants to get in here and he wants to train and he wants to fight, and that's what he's doing. And so you got to give him credit for that. You know, it's not easy training in here, and it's not easy putting this kind of time in and this kind of work, and he's doing it. And he's 100% dedicated, and he's going to fight. So you got to give him respect, and you know, he's not trying to become a champion or anything. He's a fan of the sport. He wants to get in there and see what it's about. So hats off to him, and I think he's going to do really well. He's very gifted.
For the finalpoint.com, I'm Naveed Razi. I want to thank you, Mike, for taking the time out to join us today.